Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another Dokkan animation analysis video, of course tackling the second of the anniversary LRs for the Dokkan Battle 9th anniversary. Obviously earlier today we took a look at the big man himself, the literal big man himself. Where's my boy at? The boy BROLY. Very good video. Definitely go check that out. BROLY's animations are fantastic. I'm so glad that they cooked with my boy. But now we are going to be taking a look at the man Carnival Gogeta. Obviously taking a look at all of his animations. We're going to watch them one time through, and then we are going to go through on the slow-mo. Now, I do want to also say thank you to the boy Markel. I did ask on Twitter earlier today if anybody had any comparison done for Gogeta, and my man has the whole darn thing right here for us that he did the comparisons. iKevinX, obviously, who we usually use, or Jihad. I know Jihad was having problems with his editing program, and iKevinX, like, that boy literally, like, got no sleep to just do the Broly video, so my man was out for the count. So we're relying on Markel for this one, so thank you. Obviously, I will leave this tweet linked in the description below so you can go check out this comparison for yourself. But obviously, just like the Broly video, as we go through these animations, we're just going to watch through the comparison just to kind of get an idea for how well they did in terms of mimicking the anime. So let's go ahead and get into the animations here. Now, obviously, we have some very interesting stuff for the boy Gogeta, okay? I am going to be very curious when we kind of finish the deep dive on this guy, the animation analysis for him, how I feel about these animations. Because I gotta be honest, at the moment, I'm Team Broly 100% in terms of the animations. I definitely like Broly's animations better, and that doesn't mean that I don't like Gogeta's animations, because I think that there is not a single animation in here that I would call bad by any stretch of the imagination. I said this in the Broly video too, but I'm so glad that unlike, you know, the worldwide units like with Vegito, right? I absolutely hate that guy's 12 key, and he has some really good animations like the active and the 18 key, but I can safely say that with Gogeta and Broly, both of them, all of their animations, right, there is not a single one that I would say that is bad and I dislike. So W for the boys. And I think they did a very good job mimicking the style. However, I do think with Gogeta, it is pretty clear that the work went into the Blue Gogeta animations. I think that they just look far better than the Super Gogeta animations, except for the Stardust Fall. The Stardust Fall does look really good for sure. But I think that it's pretty clear that they really put their time and effort into Blue Gogeta here. And the other thing that I do want to mention that's really interesting about this guy too is that obviously he is a Carnival LR. And of course, we have never had a Carnival LR unit before in terms of it obviously being, you know, the dual Carnival and Dokkan Fest format, right? Obviously, we had that with the worldwide celebration with all of the Cooler movie shenanigans. We've never had that for anniversary. Now, obviously, the worldwide units and the anniversary units are usually on par with each other in terms of the animations, right? They're usually both kind of, I mean, of course, they're the biggest celebrations of the year, so it makes sense for them to both kind of be on par with each other like that. But with all of that being said, it is quite interesting because obviously, as you know, if you've been watching my channel for any extended amount of time, you would know that when it comes to Carnival animations, I feel like for the most part, they are quite lacking, to say the least, in a lot of areas. Either there'll be like one really good animation that I'm like, dang, okay, they really cooked, or there'll be, right, just a lot of stinkiness all around, or there'll just be some animations that look really janky. I think still to this point, and we'll see if my mind changes after, you know, taking a deep dive into my man's here, but I still think that, like, bar none, like, easily the best set of animations is Future Gohan, like, uncontested, if I do say so myself. You can let me know what you think about that in the comment section below for sure. But we are going to hop into this video now. Also, as I always like to say, a little bit of a precursor to these videos, right? I am by no means a animation professional. I am not an animator or anything like that. I do these videos for fun. I like to take a look at these animations, obviously, all the time, and I think I have a pretty good idea of what makes a good animation. Not to mention, obviously, looking at all the PNGs of what makes these animations up, right? I think I have a pretty good idea when we're looking at some gas here. I know someone in the comments is going to make that joke that I'm talking about gas from Dragon Ball Super, because y'all get on me all the time when I say that on Twitter, using the word gas to describe something. But anyway, sorry if you can hear my window open. I'm just cracking it because it's a little hot in here. Let's go ahead and get into the man now. So, of course, we have this fly-in, which is really, really cool. Obviously, directly taken from the movie, right? Very recognizable. Cool thing about this, too, is that this asset is actually super small in the beginning, right? Obviously, with a little bit of thicker lines, right? You can see the assets change as he approaches, but obviously, in full motion, this looks fantastic, right? Looks super good, super fluid, and obviously, they have my man's hair moving, right? They have the pants flapping, everything, which is what I expect, right? I expect that to be a standard of Dokkan animations by this point, so it's nice to see that my man has it. There are definitely lesser Dokkan animations where all of that is certainly not at play. Moving past this, though, I think this is a great way to kind of introduce the super attack. It is a very interesting thing that they decide to throw the card art up really, really early. It's kind of funny because it's like, realistically, I almost wonder if they included that beginning shot. I mean, obviously, it's just referencing the movie, but the essay could have quite literally just started after the card art, and I don't think that it really would have been like much of a different result. Maybe it was just because they wanted to find a place to put a card art, but I'm glad that they included it in the beginning, because obviously it's a really cool shot, and obviously it is definitely an iconic one from the movie for sure. Also, again, as I've been saying a lot in these videos, and I was talking about in the BROLY video as well, absolutely, right? It really feels like that they've been doing these like animation analysis videos. Hello, that's me. Intros, right? Where it's like they introduce a super attack where it's almost like a mini intro animation. I feel like that's just been more frequent as time goes on when it comes to these. But anyway, moving past the card art here, obviously looking really good, by the way. We have Gogeta spin around. And obviously some of these individual shots, dude, this is such a funny shot though with him looking smug. That's great. Obviously some of these individual shots will look a little bit wonky because of course we're looking at them in a frame by frame way. This face is hilarious, by the way. But of course, obviously the whole point of looking at these in the frame by frame is because it's so much easier than watching this in full motion and scrolling back and forth every time. Obviously, when I take a look at these at the frame by frame, I'm always taking into consideration how this will actually look in motion, right? By the way, interesting thing to point out for these animations, these sprites, I need somebody to explain this to me who better understands this than I do. Maybe I'll have to ask some of my homies that understand how like the code of the game and like the files work and stuff like that. Because I know in the BROLY, in the BROLY video, right, when we're taking a look at the sprites, they are definitely a little bit more of the like regular blurry kind of Dokkan sprites, where it's like the stuff that you're kind of used to, where they look like kind of super not great, I guess. I don't even know how to really describe it. They look kind of like fuzzy almost. Like, let's just look at Frieza here, right, in the beginning of this animation. He just like kind of looks a little blurry, I guess is the best way to describe it. But it's weird because this guy, this like asset is very HD, but it's also like, it looks like pixel art. It's kind of weird. It's almost like they up the quality, but they have to keep it at like such a low file size or something that they have it look like better, but it's also just like a different kind of stinky sprite now because it still doesn't necessarily look good because it certainly doesn't fit the very high quality animations that are at play here. It feels very out of place. I mean, both of the sprite styles, I guess you would call it, if you could even call it that, definitely feel out of place, but it's just kind of interesting because I noticed this with God Goku, and we'll get into it because it's more obvious at the 18 key. In some of the super attacks where the card arts move a certain way, the sprites look like this. It's really weird. But anyway, Gogeta spinning up. right, obviously is pretty cool, right? I like that little bit of the introduction, obviously, to then have him come down around back to Broly, which obviously this is just Gogeta showing off him being, you know, himself, right? I kind of love that it's sort of nonsensical that he comes back around. Also, unfortunately, with the sprite, obviously, oops, I'm typing slashes in the search bar. This, like, makes no sense in terms of the size perspective here, like, especially like this, because I know it's supposed to be like, oh, you know, Gogeta is really far away from Broly, but then, you know, he's coming in, but obviously it looks really weird because Gogeta's this small here, and then Broly doesn't change his size practically at all once Gogeta starts to get bigger and then really big, right? Like, the perspective just doesn't really make that much sense, but again, that's not really Gogeta, that's more so just Broly. Oh, well, not Broly specifically, that's just the sprites. But I do like this little camera angle with obviously Gogeta kind of flying by, right, and then twisting around. That is pretty cool. The background camera also is adding a lot to the shot too, and I love the little bit of minimal animation that they have on Gogeta there too, where they kind of have him move back like that, right? And obviously they twist his body to kind of line up with the way that he's moving. I really like that. Again, that sort of Broly movie-esque when the characters are very small. They kind of look like little scribbles on a page, right? I really like that they really paid that much attention to detail when it came to these animations, right? So we have Gogeta obviously come up from down south, slides over, and again, very cool looking, like CGI-esque, right? Obviously in this part right here, especially right here, this looks very CGI in the way that Gogeta is shaded. It's so cool that they really had that attention to detail. Obviously we get the punch to Broly, which sends the boy flying. I did want to look, how is Gogeta after the punch? Okay, so right here, and then he's already kind of like, he put his head back. That's really interesting, because you can't really see this because it's only here for like 2 frames. Obviously, if you know, we're looking at this in the slow-mo, though, we can see that it's there. And then, of course, you see Gogeta in the background now, kind of twisted around and upside down. Of course, fitting for the scene, because obviously that's what happens in the particular scene. But we have Gogeta charge forward again, and then, of course, do a barrage of punches upside down, which is really cool. And again, directly right out of the movie. I don't think it looks too bad, right? Definitely looks pretty good. And, of course, kicking him away, which, again, another iconic shot from the movie. And then we have Gogeta. I almost said Gogeta. Broly flying away. I do like the way that the mountains look. Obviously, the perspective is very cool, where it almost looks 3D, like he's actually flying through a bunch of, you know, different hills and volcanoes, whatever this would be, right? Of course, smacking into the final one over there. And that is actually the end of the animation. I have to say, I was kind of flabbergasted by how short the 12 key was for this. It's only 16 seconds from the very start of the video. Not that short animations are necessarily a bad thing, but it definitely kind of feels a little underwhelming for an anniversary unit, I'm going to be honest. Again, obviously he has the transformations, and it's clear that that's what they focused more of their efforts on, but that doesn't mean that the other animations should suffer for it. Sorry, it's 8 a.m. and I'm recording this video, but I've not slept yet. Regardless, though, again, I don't think that this animation is bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's just lacking a little bit. It's lacking a little bit of that flair, in my opinion. Now, let's move on to the 18 key super attack for the Super Saiyan version. Actually, before we do that, let's go ahead and take a look at the 12 key in the little comparison here. So, interestingly enough, obviously, that's base Gogeta in the very beginning of this animation. And they also combined some shots from Blue Gogeta into this animation. One thing that I will give this 12 key for sure, that I talked about that I think they did a very good job with Broly as well, is that they did a very good job of combining the scenes that obviously aren't like one to another. I mean, you can clearly tell by like the transformations, right? Where obviously here, right, Super Saiyan, right? And then we go to Blue, right? And then we go to Super Saiyan again. Well, kinda, I guess. This would actually be more like when he's fighting Goku. But the point of the matter is obviously connecting those scenes to feel like they make sense, despite obviously it basically just being like clips cut up from the movie and then, you know, just changing the hair color, right? I think they do a really good job, you know, making the animation feel fluid, like it's all one big attack. So that is pretty cool for sure. Hello, Broly. All right. So then we get to the 18 key super attack. So This is the one where I'm really going to highlight that thing with the sprite, by the way. But we have Gogeta come in, right, wind up the punch, and then throw it. I think that this is well done. I know sometimes for these type of animations, I'd be like, oh, they need a couple more frames in between there for that punch. But I think this obviously emphasizes how quick Gogeta is punching. So I think it works, right? Very interesting that they kind of have his body is like the same size, but they still like make the asset a little bit bigger, and they move his arm a little bit there just for like 1 second and kind of extend it out. It looks a little bit awkward, but I also again think that that's unfortunately just because of the sprite. I feel like that would look a lot better if it wasn't just hitting a solid 2D PNG, you know what I mean? We have the enemy fly away, and of course we have Goku and Vegeta. Haha! We have them both fly around Broly here, which I think this part looks good, right? Definitely having them kind of just, you know, go around him in circles. And, of course, the iconic little hand spin, right? I like that they kind of set that up too, right? With obviously having him just kind of move around him like this. So then he's basically behind him, right? And they really emphasize it with obviously him kind of shooting off from the front of the camera to then obviously being behind Broly. And here is where I'm really going to point it out. The card art looks so strange. It looks like this, I remember, for, I think, Super Saiyan Goku in Super Saiyan God Goku's animations, because he had the same thing where there's a little bit of that like pixel shenanigans. There's another unit that I know is a better example. Oh, Bulma. I think Bulma also had this kind of thing. Let me just show you what I mean in terms of the comparison. Like, let me put up Broly's card art here, like when it appears on the screen. Right, if we look here, the way that it moves looks very natural, right? And I'll show you this in the full-time speed as well. Obviously, I'm going to give you a fair comparison here. If we go here, it looks like it's just kind of like jittering around rather than like actually being on the screen. I don't really know how to describe the difference, but like, you know, again, if we look at it, right, you can tell that, you know, there is clearly a little bit of a difference there in the way that it looks. I'm almost wondering if it's simply just the little bit of like almost aura effect they have, because they have the lines and they have the character like moving in a circle like that. But I guess really the only difference with Broly's, right, is the fact that they have this like pulsing energy shooting out of the middle. And if they didn't have that, it would feel a lot more empty. Maybe that's the problem, because it doesn't have that little bit of animation there. Very interesting, honestly. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. I'm going to have to ask some of my homies who know a little bit better about maybe why that could be the case than me, why that could be. But I digress. Moving on, we have the very cool impact frame and obviously the elbow hitting Broly before we have Gogeta spin around and then give him the old wallop kick down. By the way, if you are wondering why this animation looks so familiar, of course, the Stardust Fall is, of course, from AGL Gogeta, not STR Gogeta. But I do believe, and I suppose my memory could be failing me here, so you can correct me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure this is a section in STR Gogeta's animation where he hits him with the old elbow and then gives the funny spin, right, to then hit them away. Because I very specifically remember him being base form when he did that in Dokkan. And I think the spin looks good, by the way. It is quite literally just like spinning a PNG around in a circle, but I mean, like, what else would you do? And not to mention, it is pretty cool that they give you some perspective on his legs, and his head actually does move there a little bit, right? His legs kind of go under, right, the little bit of his vest there. And not to mention, you can also see the obi belt, right, kind of changing position, and his leg then emerges as he does the kick. That is a pretty cool little attention to detail there for sure. Kicking Broly down, we of course then have easily the best part of the Super Saiyan animations, right? Such a cool transition, by the way, there with a little bit of the rocks, right, breaking up from the ground. It is a little bit unfortunate that they just cut to Gogeta, but I mean, I guess to be fair, that wouldn't really make sense for Gogeta to be by the rocks there. We have a little spin, which I think looks pretty good, right? Obviously, Gogeta's known for his whimsical spinning around, so it is pretty cool that they added a lot of that in here. And I do remember that from the movie pretty vividly, that face, so that's cool that they got that in there. Funny long arm Gogeta. This reminds you of that one shot from AGL MUI Goku. But obviously this looks good in full motion because of course they're stretching out their limbs for the sake of the animation. We have Gogeta do the little spin in the sky, which looks fantastic, and I love the little aura they have on him as well. And we have the blue ring begin to surround him before entering his hand, and the beautiful energy that obviously begins to emit the shot from the top. And then of course we get peak. This is so well animated with obviously Gogeta's very intense expression from the movie. This is literally exactly how I remember it from the movie. They did such a good job on that. The zoom out to then having the effect explode, and obviously for a little bit you're kind of like in the middle of it basically, right? You're kind of seeing it all fall, and then they show you the side view where obviously then it begins to rain down and attack Broly like this. This is again exactly how it was in the movie, and we have the little spin from Gogeta here too, which is awesome as he's launching it. Not to mention the aura being present the entire time is such a cool little effect, and it looks great. Obviously it's not like your typical aura where it's just a PNG of the aura, you know, like flopping around. It's actually like around him, and the colors change as he moves around. It's so cool. They even got this part where the enemy is taking all these attacks, and they bothered to have the sprite move around and get hit by it and do their best with the sprites that are in the game to then, you know, kind of have them take all these attacks, and you get the side view of the Stardust Fall there. Again, when we take a look at this in the comparison, they did such a good job of replicating this. Man, this is such a shame, I will say, that they didn't include this part, because like, how would they do this with the sprites without it looking absolutely awful? I wish they would have included it somehow, but if it was going to look awful, I guess I would rather that they didn't. So I guess I'm glad that they didn't. But I will say the one thing that does kind of then feel a little bit weird about that is Gogeta obviously like readies up his hands in this shot, right? But then it kind of doesn't really amount to anything because he's just then elbowing Broly. But I guess it's almost just like the Carter covered up that scene is the way that you could kind of think about it. Regardless, though, we have the little spin, and here is what we're really looking for the comparison, right? The Stardust Fall is so well done, dude. Look at that. Look at that, dude. That is insanely well done. Stinky sprite moment, but like other than that, right? Holy cow, dude. They cooked. It looks exactly like the movie. They did such a good job on this for sure. I think this is easily the best part of the Super Saiyan animations for sure. Very, very good, to say the least. Alright, so now we move on to the transformation. I'm actually going to be curious to see the references for this when we get to that point. But with Gogeta basically teleporting in, right, we have him move just a little bit before then flying up, right? I do think that this animation is a little janky. Obviously, again, we are looking at it in the slow speed, but let's put it in the full. I think even looking at it in full, it looks like just, I don't know, the way that they have the camera turn around him, I feel like could be a little bit more fluid. Again, it's not terrible by any means, but I just feel like it could look a little bit better. Moving on from that, though, we obviously have Gogeta enter the sky, and I'm really curious to see if this is going to be, again, a reference from the movie, because I wonder why, like, he hits this pose, and it's kind of funny, because, like, he gets into this, and his hand is not even in the same position then when they cut to him actually powering up, which is so funny, but I guess it's just the way that they wanted to do it. It's a little bit weird. I think this transformation, I will say, is probably my least favorite of all of these animations for Gogeta, for sure. You just kind of cut from his hand to then having him already kind of being mid-transformation of sort of being that like in-between blue. I will say, holy cow, these impact frames, again, I know we were talking about this with Broly. Go check that video out, by the way, if you haven't yet. But holy moly, dude, these impact frames are so good. They always cook with these, and I really want to see like more artists like tackle like a redraw of this, because it's just, oh, this art style is so peak. But yeah, obviously then having those really cool impact frames transition into more blue aura around Gogeta before then having it explode out around him. And I do like the aura a lot for this. I do like that they kind of cover him in blue before then having it explode off of him. And I love those little bit of like shatter effects that kind of come off of him as almost like the light around him is breaking off, which is really cool. I like that effect a lot. I will say, I think the one thing about this whole animation, and I'm really not a fan of, is the angles. The angles here just feel really off to me, especially on the blue section. It kind of feels like they're like overplaying Gogeta's part. Like on all the little flips and stuff, I feel like it made a lot more sense for the super attacks. But here, I feel like they're just making him a little extra saucy just because. And I feel like it's almost a little bit too much in this animation. I know that's kind of weird to say, but it's just kind of how I feel. But yeah, I don't know, like this angle for its setting up just doesn't really flow well into this. I don't really like the position of his hand, and I'm not really the biggest fan of the angle, you know, having all that lead into this angle. I don't know, I guess at least his hand is the same before he clenches it, but it just feels kind of a really like weird sideways angle. I don't know. It's not the worst, again. It's definitely not a bad animation by any means, like I said in the beginning of this video, but it is certainly my least favorite one, I would say. At least the anime is Obi belt moving, bro. Let's go ahead and take a look at the side-by-side, though, for the transformation. Interesting. So it seems that Markel couldn't find anything exactly for that, but I guess it does make sense with the angle because it is taken directly from the movie, but I think it feels more natural in the film because obviously when it comes to this section, he's kind of doing it like midway through, right? They get into the shattered dimension and then bro powers up real quick and then gets back to the fight, right? I think it just feels a lot more natural in the movie, and with the flow of the way that the animation led up to that point in the Dokkan version, I feel like it just doesn't flow as well and the angle just doesn't fit, right? Like that's not like a bad angle in general. I think it just doesn't work that well for me personally for this specific animation. But again, to reiterate, it's definitely not bad. Alright, so moving on from the transformation, we now have the counter animation, which is really, really cool. I like this a lot, right? Obviously, a super iconic shot from the movie. Let me get back to it here. Here we go, right? Obviously, or I guess this is more like an attack nullification rather than a counter, because obviously he doesn't do a damage back. But yeah, super cool, and I really, really like the way that this looks, obviously with the spin. Dude, that camera angle as well, having the foot pass by the camera there, right? It is a little bit weird because his foot would be super far away, like in comparison, but they obviously stretch it out a lot. I still think it works really well though. It's a super cool angle and I love using that as a transition to then the impact frame of obviously smacking the enemy with the kick. I think that is really cool. I guess it is a counter then. I don't remember his kit. I'm sorry. I literally read that like probably 8 hours ago at this point or something. Regardless though, obviously the counter slash nullification animation. They did such a good job, though, replicating especially this part from the movie, because obviously this is such an iconic scene, and I love the blue aura, too. It looks so nice. It is kind of interesting, too, that with the enemy sprite, they do have them launch this Ki Blast at Gogeta, which realistically for some characters won't make sense. Like Hercule obviously will not really make sense if you're fighting him as an enemy for this, and it is going to look really weird, I would assume, if you're fighting a giant character, because they'll just be coming out of their shin basically, this like little blast. So obviously this really only works for like human-ish sized characters. It is kind of interesting, but I would almost rather them do something like that just so that the animation would make more sense, and I think it's fine. I do as well like the fact that they have him do the little flip to set that up when he's still in Scribble Gogeta, right, to set up for the kick, which looks amazing, and I love the fire effects on that too. This is such a good animation. I'm really glad that they cooked for this, because counter animations are always just so sick. It is a bit of a shame that you literally can't see Gogeta here. You can see him in the background, obviously, but you can't see what he actually looks like in the shot, because that bum Broly is blocking the screen, unfortunately. Alright, so we now move on to the Gogeta 12 key, and dude, oh right, of course, we have to take a look at the counter animation in comparison to the anime. Like, dude, this is like almost one for one. Like, that's what I'm saying. With this, I think, like, they got it, bro. They nailed it, right? No complaints from me on this one. Absolutely peak, right? It is literally like you're watching the movie. Such a good job on that one. But anyhow, I think it's pretty clear once you get to the blue animation here, right? That, dude, the budget has gone up. You look at this shot, like the first like 5 seconds of this animation with Gogeta coming in on an impact frame, by the way, which is super sick, and then obviously having the aura explode around him, and just the colors and everything, dude, this is where the budget went. Super Saiyan Gogeta, eat your heart out. I'm sorry, my boy, except for the start as fall. That was really good. But with this shot of Gogeta flying upward, looks absolutely fantastic, right? Obviously having him charge to the side. And I really like, again, the kind of like angles and body movement that they have in these, because they really nail like how this should be, right? I feel like lesser animations wouldn't pay as much attention to detail on this, but you know, Gogeta scooting to the side and obviously kind of almost like halting mid-air while still sort of moving before then, you know, turning his body and moving the other direction. I quite like that. And in the perspective of Dokkan Battle, obviously this is really cool because of course the game is vertical, right? Gogeta kind of stops before the edge of the screen. I quite like that little bit there too. That's cool. Yeah, the aura in this entire section is just so fantastically done. Like the little bit of the spikes and the little purple shooting out everywhere. Obviously the very nice blues. All of it looks fantastic. I like this punch shot of Gogeta. I think there's just enough frames as there needs to be. And of course, this iconic shot of Gogeta coming through and punching Broly here. I do kind of wish that this was a little bit more close up, to be honest with you. It's also weird not seeing Gogeta's bang there, but obviously it's because it's flapping up, and that is good attention to detail for sure. I kind of wish that this shot was a little bit more close up, but I mean, I still think it looks good, right? It doesn't look bad by any stretch. The the imagination, haha, funny. But anyway, I do kind of wish that there was a couple more frames here, right? Like maybe just one more. Again, definitely a minor nitpick though. But obviously punching him away, we do have the enemy sprite fly into the background. Of course, then followed by the card art. Yeah! This card art's doing it too, or they're just moving it across the screen and they have the little like speed lines. Did Broly's for the transformation art? Here we go. Right? Did it have the little like boom, 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 boom? Yeah, it did. The little like aura effect almost like coming out the middle. Huh. I wonder why Gogeta's doesn't have that. The card art just shakes and they have like the white lines. It's so weird. It makes it feel like kind of empty. Alright, so we have Gogeta flying through the sky here, which again looks really, really good, right? I like that shot that they have him kind of pass by. Dude, oh my gosh. This part is really cool, by the way. This is definitely one of my favorite shots in this whole animation. So they have Gogeta fly forward, and as he hits Broly, right, the aura dissipates, which is really cool. And then we have him come up, bam, impact frame, right? Obviously throwing a punch towards Broly, bam, another hit, right, from the knee. Super cool, right? And then I believe we get the kick, right? Bam, looks super cool with kicking Broly away. Gogeta powering up again and flying towards him. This is such a cool beatdown section as well. Again, super well executed. And this part, dude, this is easily my favorite section of animation from the 12th key. I don't even usually like Dokkan beatdown sections like that, but by golly, bro, holy moly, this section is so well done where Gogeta just comes in and is absolutely whopping my boy. Looks so good. They did such a good job with it. And again, stylistically, it looks exactly like the movie. Of course, they had to include this shot, the shading, fantastically done. The facial expressions, on point. The lighting, so good. Love the blue electricity. And I love this little bit here that they kind of linger on this shot at the end of all that, right? Obviously with Gogeta moving ever so slightly, right? With Broly also moving along with him. I love that little attention to detail, that little touch, right? Obviously it's kind of like those moments in anime where the character punches them and they kind of move slowly for a second. That is super cool. I love the electricity effects as well. Gogeta spinning backwards looks fantastic, obviously, then landing. The landing super clean as well, by the way. And I love the pose that Gogeta hits at the end, too. Looks great, right? Obviously, readying up as the ground beneath him explodes. And I love, too, the attention to detail of that little bit of lava. By the way, before we see that, dude, that blue plume of smoke, cooking. And the little bit of dust clouds coming off of it, too. Dude, so good. With the rocks, oh, hello. I decided to get jump scared by the animation, apparently. With the rocks obviously exploding out from the attack, right? I love the little bit of attention to detail that not only is everything breaking, but Gogeta does not care. He is still stanced up right where he is. But I love that they have the lava kind of explode out from behind where Gogeta is. That is such a cool little thing right there that obviously then leads into this huge explosion in the sky with obviously the ground cracking and the lava exploding everywhere. I wish that this animation didn't get dark so quickly so it's a little bit easier to see, but I love that they kind of have the lava spew everywhere, obviously as a result of Gogeta's attack. That is very cool. Alright, so then we have the, are we getting into the peak animation here? Yes, so we are now getting into the active skill, which will then lead into the 18 key. I think the 18 key is my favorite out of all of the animations, but the active skill is very, very good. So of course, they had to include this iconic shot of Gogeta. But before we get to that, haha, I remembered this time. We have obviously the 12 key reference here. Again, like, dude, oh, is Twitter having a heart attack? It is. Let me give you a little refresh on that. Twitter loves to just, like, not load half the time. It's a fantastic website, I'm telling you, man. Either way, though, let's go back here to right here. This is where this animation ended. Looks fantastic, right? Again, are they really going to buff around me again here? Dude, let's just skip ahead a little bit. There we go. Everything looks immaculate. With Gogeta giving him the beatdown, right, to this part, right, the shading, again, the lighting, even the little flip that he does at the end, even the explosion, right, it's cool that they kind of added that in, right, because obviously in the Dokkan version, he just kind of slides back, because I believe that's when he then does the Kamehameha, so it's pretty cool that for the Dokkan version, they obviously added a little bit of extra to it to kind of have it make a little bit more sense, I suppose, in the context of the animation, but yeah, either way, though, like, dude, they did such a good job replicating everything from the movie here, especially that beatdown. Maybe that's why I like it so much, because it looks just like the movie. They did a really, really good job with it, for sure, right? Definitely cooked on the 12 key. Alright, so now for the active skill, right? Obviously, the super iconic shot, they had to include this in some capacity, so I'm glad that they included it for the active skill, right? Looks really good. The funny smirk, which again is accurate to the movie. Holy moly, I did not notice how my boy stretches there. Hold on. Hold on a second. Let's go back to that. Whoa. That is weird. He, like, tilts. Like, I know the ground is doing that. But his, like, whole body, like, the perspective on him changes. That's really weird. I feel like his body shouldn't move like that. I mean, I guess maybe with the camera they were trying to do a little rotoscoping. I feel like it looks a little bit weird. In full motion, it definitely will not, again, of course, look as wonky. But let me actually watch it in full motion real quick, just so we can get that full effect. Yeah, it definitely looks fine in full motion. It's kind of interesting that that's how they do it, though. That they have the whole camera tilt. You really can't tell because it happens so quickly, right? He just jumps up into the sky, like, practically immediately. So, yeah, definitely looks good for sure, again, in full motion. That's why, you know, I always try and, you know, kind of give you a combination, not only the full motion, but also the slowdown. And, of course, have to keep in mind that sometimes things will look a lot better when it looks fast. But, yeah, obviously having him move up to the sky looks really good. I love this little kick. Now, I have to mention it, ladies and gentlemen. I have to mention it because it is my job as the animation analysis guy. I'm sure some of you are waiting for me to get to this part. Now, we have Gogeta kick down, right? Which, again, this whole little flip section looks good. This looks very Broly movie-esque when characters are far away. Again, we got more Scribble Gogeta, which I really like. That's just what I'm going to call these far away shots. I'm going to call it Scribble Broly and Scribble Gogeta. By the way, I didn't mention it, but I do really like the part where Gogeta, like, flies up. I do really like the way that they kind of just have him, like, teleport almost there. Like, phew, that he's moving so fast that he flies up to the sky. I do think that looks really good. So the kick, though. Obviously, the kick starts off fine, right? And I like this little bit of perspective where it looks super long because obviously it's closer to your face. And then we get this funny shot right here. Now, I know I even made a comment about this on Twitter. Mistakes happen. Bandai is only human. And I know that I could be going off about, and I did in that tweet. I'll admit it, bro. I'm only human as well, bro. I feel like this type of thing is basically unacceptable when it comes to this type of thing because of how much money these individuals make, right? When making these animations, that something like this should not even be let slide. They should be watching this thing frame by frame just like I am to make sure that none of their frames screwed up. Not to analyze the animation like I am, but just to make sure that nothing like this happens, right? This tells me right here that they don't do that. Or that they don't do it for every video. Because here's what's real interesting about this particular shot here. If we take a look, right, my boy Matt talked about here that, right, for this shot, because of course everybody was commenting on it when it comes to the Twitter video, this is a alignment issue caused by the LWF format, basically what makes the animations move in the actual like back end of Dokkan, and its compatibility with Flash, right, another thing that helps everything work. Stuff like this can happen when the image is not perfectly centered even by 0.01 units. So obviously the whole point is that it has to be exact, right? LWFs are very old and they can cause a lot of bugs for even the smallest oversight. They will fix it, don't worry. So obviously, again, it's just an error with the way that it essentially pumps out the animation. And what's interesting about this is indeed they will be fixing it, because this Twitter user right here pointed out the fact that when they showcased it in game, right, the frame was not cut. So it's a problem with the Twitter video. And Matt then pulled up the reference for us, right? As you can see here, right, there is no error in this version of it, right? Which is really interesting that it is only here, because obviously this is the same asset. So it's weird because it's like, obviously he goes back up almost when he's then kicking down again, when realistically, as you can see by this shot here, he should already kind of be, you know, midway through the screen, then arriving at this shot, right? So it should go from this to this, right? Making sense that obviously the camera then zooms in on him. Because obviously it looks so weird that he looks like this, because it's supposed to be aligned with the bottom of the frame like this. So obviously this is the video from the live stream, right? This is the preview that they showed from the stream. So this will not be a problem, I'm assuming, when the video releases, or when the unit releases rather. And obviously, right, if it is, they will absolutely be fixing it, because I am sure that these Twitter videos were recorded long before these videos for the actual stream were recorded. That would be my guess, right? Or maybe they knew that that was an error and they fixed it and obviously had that on the stream, but they never fixed it for the Twitter video. Who knows how it works exactly when it comes to the back end of the logistics of like recording the essays and stuff like that, right? And at one point in development, they record them and all that type of stuff, right? But I just wanted to point this out because obviously this is in this Twitter preview. And of course, I know a bunch of people on Twitter are talking about it. So I figured it was worth including in this video that obviously it is just an error and it will be fixed when it comes to the game. So with that all being said, obviously in terms of my, analysis of animations, right, and obviously for the sake of this video, I am not going to be knocking this animation for this, because obviously this is just a error with this specific video and not how the animation will actually look in game, although it is very funny. Your boy can't deny that. Alright, so then we have Gogeta coming in here. I will say, I do feel like for some of the way that Gogeta's drawn in this active skill, he does look a little bit like off to me for some reason. I don't know. I swear this shot, like his eyebrows look too big or something. It looks a little bit better here, I guess, but like still looks a little off to me. I don't know. But they do have him kind of like blur a little bit and move him to obviously then imply obviously the speed of the kick before moving to the obviously bonk to the face, which I do really like that for the impact frame here. They have his whole foot and pant leg in there, which is pretty cool, right? Obviously having that little bit of impact, right? And a little bit of twist on Gogeta as he's obviously twisting around. I feel like his feet also look way too small here. I guess his shoes, right? The, what is that called when they fuse? What planet did they? Metamoran, there we go. The Metamoran 5s, right? Instead of the Air 5s, the Air Jordans, right? The Air Metamorans, right? Whatever you want to call these bad boys. They look really small. I noticed this the first time I was watching the animations. I swear they just drew his feet way too small. I don't know. It's such a weird detail, but it definitely looks a little bit strange, honestly. And here, too, I feel like he's drawn a little bit weird in this entire section here. When obviously then he's turning around, right, to then bring his fist forward. I don't know, man. I swear it just looks very strangely drawn for that little bit of the section there. Then obviously we do have the leg come around though to then give Broly another kick, which I do like this shot a lot. It looks good. I love the follow-up, right? You can see even too, right? They do such a good job of making this very anime-esque, where Gogeta's foot actually recoils a tiny little bit there, right, after making contact with the enemy, right there, right? You can see it gives a tiny little bit of change before then, of course, it has the full, right, effect of the kick going. And that's very cool, right? Obviously very anime-esque, where they have like a punch or a kick hit, and then it kind of lingers for a moment, and then the enemy gets flown away. That's exactly what it looks like. And the foot looks really good there too. For some reason, that specific animation with his leg there reminds me of something from One Punch Man. I don't know why, but that like very, very specific, like couple of frames right there really reminds me of that for some reason. Regardless though, Gogeta flies back, and we have Broly fly into the mountain there. And we then have, I can't believe they included this animation, but I love it, right? We have Gogeta flexing on him. I really, really like that. They just kind of have the camera pan away, and we have Gogeta, right, look into the camera. I feel like he's drawn a little bit weird here, but I think this is how it was in the actual movie, right? I do love that little smirk though. That is great. And have it kind of give this fisheye lens we were talking about in the Broly video, right? Where he was kind of looking into a Ring doorbell, bro. That's exactly what this is. But obviously it looks a little bit better in full motion, and the shot does look good, right? Before obviously backing up, and then of course having Gogeta do the funny chest thing, which I think is so funny that this whole animation inflicts damage on the enemy. But again, I mean, they do fly into a mountain. It's just funny that Gogeta does the little thing at the end, obviously from the credits of the movie when he does this. And I do like that little blue kind of like pa-cha to kind of emphasize it, right? Because obviously it would look a little bit weird if it was just a regular background. I do like that little effect there for sure. If we look at this in comparison to the anime version of this, obviously, again, they did a really, really good job with getting all of the little details there down pat, right? Again, everything to the movement, all the little minuscule parts. And of course, again, yeah, his face basically does look like this in the like end credits section there of the movie. I honestly think it might just be because you're not used to seeing the full face. It's kind of cut off a little bit by the top and bottom of the movie. That kind of makes it look a little bit weird. I do want to see, does his foot look like that in that one section? Obviously, it's going to be a little bit harder to pause because, of course, you know, Twitter video. I guess his foot is kind of small there. Yeah, it is definitely a little tiny. I feel like it's not as, like, weird looking as the Dokkan version, but, I mean, yeah. They still did, you know, they still got it for the most part. And I think for this whole animation in general, again, like, dude, just looking at the comparison to the movie, like, they did such a good job translating everything from the film to the movie, for sure. So pretty cool, to say the least. I definitely like the execution, right? I think that they did a good job, and that's why I always like looking at these comparisons, because I think the comparisons always do a really good job of putting into perspective, you know, how good the animations actually look in comparison to the anime itself. Alright, so then we now are on to the 18 key. My favorite animation for sure of all of Gogeta's animations here, right? We now have, oh right, I forgot about this part. This is where they show the like target mechanic at play, which is basically just like a little like beep 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 kind of scouter. So that's pretty cool. Nothing too crazy though in terms of the animation department. But we then have the boy. Oh my gosh. Look at this starting shot, dude. Holy cow, this is straight cooking with gas. They absolutely cooked on the intro for this. This looks so good. This is clearly where the budget went, right? This one's kind of like more of a Vegito special type of case where you can tell this is where the money went. And I love that they have Gogeta hit this pose. Dude, so many things at play here. First of all, the pose itself, I love this. Not only the zoom in, but then the zoom out is like a combination of Goku and Vegeta's iconic poses, right, from their first battle. And obviously they do it at the end of Super as well. Such a cool little reference, kind of combining those two things. That's awesome. Not to mention, we then get the super sick, right, obviously the power up of the aura and the impact frame here, dude. Oh my gosh. Look at this, man. Holy cow, it looks so good. The aura then around Gogeta looks fantastic, right? Looks so good. I love the camera work here again. This could have easily been a simple cut to having it be a little bit more far out, but no, they actually have the camera fly backwards to then show you the aura flaring up like crazy and all the dust. I like that they also do this as a kind of distraction from the cut almost, where they have this blue energy appear on the screen to kind of represent Gogeta flying forward right before just cutting to this, and I think it works really well for sure. We of course have Gogeta then flying towards the screen, which this shot looks really, really, really good, right? Obviously, with him, you know, basically blasting towards the camera. The aura looks fantastic. He looks really good. I love the way that this is animated, and a super cool way to do this transition, right? You can tell how HD this is. Like, look at my man's hair, dude. It looks so good. My man definitely went to the barber before he fought Broly. We have the hair kind of panned down right over the screen, and they use the hair as a transition to the side of his head. Dude, how genius is that with having the camera zoomed in? That is a peak transition if I've ever seen one. Holy moly. We then, of course, have this really cool side shot of Gogeta with him flying forward, and I really like the angle, by the way, here, where it's like this weird, like, kind of going down. I really like this very unique angle. Bam! Knocking him into the shattered dimension, which is really, really cool, right? All the little effects and having him spin around before kicking him, right? Very cool. I love how kind of like almost subtly they go into the shattered dimension. And it's kind of funny because obviously with the 12 key, you know, there is no shattered dimension, but they still kick you in here even though Gogeta does not have a domain and Broly does, right? Which is still cool, and obviously, you know, there's no reason why they can't just do this anyway, even though, you know, Gogeta doesn't have like the domain of the effect, right? It's just because it's the background from the scene. Again, it's one of those things, funny enough, I talked about this again in the Broly video, where like, I swear sometimes they just love to like keep as close to the source material, even with sometimes who the character is fighting, and then sometimes they try and acclimate it to be like more you know, usable, or what's the right word here? I can't think of the correct one, but more like able to fit in with any character that they're fighting, right? Have it make a little bit more sense for being a little bit more like, you know, widely accessible to having, you know, the character fight any enemy. But I kind of like it better when they just stick to the animation and just kind of, you know, have it be a full reference rather than going only halfway. So I really like that they did this. Obviously, the background doesn't really matter as much for that fact of who they're fighting, but I think you still get my point. Either way, though, I like the little kick and the yellow effect that comes off of that, too. Gogeta flying to give the follow-up is really cool. And I did not even notice this when watching the animations for the first time. We have Gogeta come in here. First of all, I love the way that he kind of, like, swings his body a little bit. That's really cool, right? Looks super good. We have the iconic Gogeta kick, but from Blue Gogeta here. Obviously, this is when he kicks Janemba, right, in that one piece of promo art. And in the Tech Gogeta, he also does this, I believe, in the 12 key super attack. So it's kind of funny to see it here, right? Obviously, with him kicking Broly back. I like the little effects to emphasize it. And dude, Gogeta's movement here is just so perfect, right? Having everything at play just looks so good. I like the little spin that they give my boy as well, right? Obviously, after following up with that animation, right? Kind of having him spin around. It does look a little bit like a PNG that is just kind of like being spun around, but I mean, I guess that is how it would look, right? Like, I can't really knock them, and they do a good job of having this little bit of movement of obviously like the Obi belt kind of settling after the fact and his hair shifting a little bit, right? So it's not like it is just a solid PNG, but they have Gogeta move towards the screen and teleport about before we get this close-up shot, right? Which is very reminiscent to Vegeto's 12 key, right, from Worldwide. We have him hit the angry face, which looks really, really good. I will say, I do think the shading is a little bit weird in this section, because it looks so much like the movie here, right? Even to the point of this shot right here. Before he then teleports, I feel like the aura and like how he looks a lot more Dokkan-esque for some reason. Like, it still looks a lot like the movie, but it makes me look a lot, or makes me look. It makes me feel like it's a lot more like it's a Dokkan asset. I think it also doesn't help that for when he's teleporting, it is quite literally just a PNG that is appearing, you know, over and over, you know, and not moving whatsoever. I mean, like, it would make sense, obviously, for this scene that, of course, he's moving so fast that you can't literally see him moving, but I think it just looks a little bit jarring, not to mention the perspective of the enemy sprite, for sure. But yeah, I feel like the shading here just doesn't really match the, like, shading from, the, you know, this part of the animation, right? When Gogeta's really close up, right? And then going to that close-up of his face, I feel like the shading is just a little bit weird, or like maybe it's something with the aura. I don't know. It's definitely not like the biggest difference where it's like, oh my gosh, it looks terrible. This is absolutely me nitpicking, right? But obviously, again, trying to analyze. So that's what we do. I do think it looks very akin to, though, when he is teleporting about a couple seconds before, right? The kind of style of this asset, right, I feel like is definitely close to this one. So I guess if anything, that's good, because obviously then at least it keeps it consistent a little bit there. But I do like the kind of like pressure lines almost. And that shot going to Gogeta's kick does look pretty good. I will say, I really don't like the way that this asset in particular looks. I feel like it looks really out of place. It looks a lot more like a Dokkan asset than it does in the style of the movie to me. Obviously, the kick like itself is really cool with, you know, having it, you know, fly past the camera for this, and then the impact frame being the transition. But I swear this just looks super out of place to me. And everything after that doesn't, which is so funny, right? Obviously, Gogeta, his hand coming down, right, to then form the Kamehameha in his hand. The other hand forming the Gallic Gun, because obviously in the movie, right, Goku and Vegeta do the Gallic Kamehameha, even though the Gallic Gun is yellow for some reason in the movie, but that's just how it is. And we then get this really cool shot of obviously Vegeta holding both of the two attacks. I will say, I do kind of wish that they didn't have this right here. It is like a cool shot in and of itself, but I feel like it would have made a lot more sense to go from his two hands, cut this part out in its entirety, and then go to this shot right here, where it's a close-up of Gogeta's face, because then it's like, oh, the hand, and then you see his face, and then they pan out to show you what he's doing, rather than having the hands, right, showcased, and you're like, oh, what's gonna happen? And then they completely show you the shot, and then they go to like another teaser. It just doesn't really make sense in terms of the flow of the animation. Like, it's not a bad shot in and of it of what's there. I think it just doesn't flow as well with the animation. I kind of wish it was just cut out, to be honest with you. But this shot right here obviously is super sick. Everything about this just looks incredible, right? I really, really like this. Looks super good, right? With obviously, you know, him holding the two attacks. The pan out to obviously then see them more so in his hand. And again, even the effects on them look good. And having it kind of zoom out, right? You can see right here the change in the thickness of the lines. I do kind of wish they would have waited till it was a little farther away, but it still looks pretty good. And obviously then getting really, really small, we have Scribble Gogeta holding these things until he lifts them both above his head, with a really cool transition obviously being this impact frame of the energy smashing together before we have it being held over Gogeta's head, right, with a little bit of a zoom into his face. The expression does look a little bit weird, but again, I think it's just because it's the angle, right, because obviously you're kind of like looking up at him. But then we have his face move down. The eyes are a little bit too big there, to be honest. Also, does his head look off there? I swear his head, it looks like it's like photoshopped onto his body, like, whereas these look like it's just naturally connected. That one kind of looks like it's pasted on. I don't know, it's a little weird. Maybe it's because it's the same asset, but they're just changing, or it's the same body asset, but they're just changing the head a little bit. Maybe that's why it looks so out of place. This face, I will say, obviously this part is a Dokkan anime. Dude, talk about the Ring doorbell meme. This right here, I feel like looks a little bit janky, if I'm being honest. I will watch this in full motion to just kind of watch it over again, but I've watched this a bunch of times and I still notice how weird this face looks. It doesn't look as off-putting as when BROLY does it. Not only is obviously BROLY, right, like, of course, his is in the movie when he has that little bit of the... Where is that funny zoom in on his face? Let me see if I can find it. Where he has that little bit of the part where he's like flying forward. It looks a little funny, but it is like in the movie. That is how it looks in the film when he has that little funny look on his face. I can't find it right now. I think it's in the 12 key, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Either way, though, when he flies... Oh, no, it's right here. when he flies forward, right, he kind of looks a little goofy like this because they're obviously trying to have it be, you know, emphasize that he's moving past the camera. But not only is this movie accurate, maybe this is what they were trying to reference with Gogeta, I don't know. But obviously it happens so quick that it's not as noticeable. But I swear I noticed this the very first time that I saw the animation. So I don't know. I know it's just because of the angle that it looks a little bit weird. That of course it's like his head slamming down, but I still feel like it's a little bit too much fisheye lens for my taste, right? I do like the transition though quite afterward, where we have the attack then kind of cover the screen, right? Obviously the energy flowing everywhere, then transitioning immediately into, right, an impact frame of, you can see like the light from the energy, which is super cool. Obviously having it blast out for a second before then showing the energy actually coming out of Gogeta's hands, which is really cool. A little Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta reference there, I suppose. And you're obviously kind of inside the blast as it flies away, which is really cool. Then of course, obviously going to the card art, for some reason, they just haven't moved around and flash it, which is really weird. But we then have the energy fly forward, which looks really good. I love the way that the energy blast looks. It looks so animated and so well done. Again, a lot more like actual energy rather than just a straight line. It looks super cool. The impact frames here to break the dimension look fantastic as well. Obviously having the little bit of the impact frame there, right, as it hits the enemy, the right, and then of course a little explosion, right, super cool. And then of course the same sort of dimension shatter with a little bit of explosion though in the background to then transition into obviously back reality, or back to reality, excuse me. Obviously Broly's looks a little bit more like the movie, but of course it makes more sense for Gogeta's to kind of end on an explosion because of course, you know, he just launched the attack. Let's go ahead and take a look at this in comparison to the movie. Obviously, a lot of this is Dokkan original stuff. Yep, they talk about that little reference there. Yeah, okay, so I guess they are just, that definitely looks like that to me, where, you know, it's that one shot of Broly that I guess they're referencing with Gogeta there. The kick, yep, had to point that out, of course. And again, most of this stuff is, of course, like a Dokkan original animation. I mean, of course, this part is. Yeah, I don't know. It's just something about his face in that section. It's just a little weird. Yeah, and obviously the dimension shatter. Someone in the comments did point out that this particular shot of Gogeta, you know, right here, does also kind of look like this too. So that could also be the case, right? It does look very akin to the pose that Goku does here. But I'd kind of like to think that it's more like this, of a combination of both Goku and Vegeta's poses there. Now, with all of that being said, my final thoughts on this bad boy. Again, I do like these animations overall. I think that they are good, right? There is not a single animation in here that I would point at and say is bad, just like, you know, with Vegito's animations, right? Especially that 12th key. I hate to keep bringing it up, but man, it just bothers me so much. Regardless, though, I think all of these animations easily top that. It is pretty clear, though, with this guy that they definitely put the most amount of work into the blue animations, right? And not to mention, obviously, of course, since they're doing these Dokkan original animations for this type of thing, right? Giving this guy basically the Gogeta special, right? Since obviously Vegito got the Vegito special. Makes a lot of sense to kind of give him a little bit of like, you know, an antithesis to his Vegito special with a Gogeta unit. So that is really cool, and I think it's very well executed. Again, just like with Broly's animations for the most part of all of these, I think that they did a very good job of making these all cohesively flow together. I still think this animation right here, just overall the whole thing, the transformation is my least favorite. But I really like, obviously, the stuff that's directly taken from the movie looks really good, right? Like this, obviously this part here too, the beatdown in the 12 key, right? I think if I had to pick, ironically enough, maybe this is blasphemy, but I think I might like his 12 key Super Saiyan Blue Super the most, to be 100% honest with you. It's just so cool, man. And obviously the Gogeta special part is really, really cool looking, right? And they still do a fantastic job with it. But I think it's just the movie accuracy obviously is something that I care about a lot. So I think it's just, you know, super cool to see how good of a job that they actually did with it. This active skill is so funny too, and I'm glad that they actually threw this in here, because obviously they could have definitely not referenced this, but I'm glad that they did in some way. I think overall, my thoughts are still the same. that I think Broly's animations are just more cohesive, right? That I think that overall they are just much better as a complete package, right? Obviously, Gogeta has some moments in it that certainly I would say like outshine some of Broly's stuff. But I think just as an entire set of animations, I think Broly's are still a little bit better. I think it's kind of unfortunate because Gogeta is a carnival unit. I don't know what their stigma is with these carnival units, or if it's something that they have like in writing that they're like, yeah, the Dokkan Fest animations have to look better than the carnivals or something like that. I don't know. But I swear it's just these little things where these carnival units, even the ones that look so good, still get shafted in some way, especially in comparison to their, you know, Dokkan counter, or their Dokkan counterpart, their Dokkan Fest counterpart. I mean, even talking about like Cooler, right? With Cooler, his animations were much better than the majority of, well, maybe it was really just the active skill for Birdcoo, because Birdcoo's animations still did look pretty good, but I still feel like maybe overall Coolers were a little bit better. I would have to go back and look at what I said in those original animation analysis videos. I think they're both still good, but even especially, I think a better example would be the Super Saiyan Boys versus Metal Cooler. Metal Cooler's animations for a lot of it were really stinky, and I think those Super Saiyans, even though I didn't like them, you know, as much, and I think I've grown to appreciate them a lot more over time, but I think their animations were easily above Metal Cooler's, right? And it's certainly not as night and day between Gogeta and Broly here, right? I would think they're a lot more on par with each other than them, for sure. But I think it's still clear that overall, to me anyway, I think Gogeta's animations just aren't up to as snuff as the boy Broly. Again, not to say that these animations are bad by any means. I do really, really like them. I think they are pretty cool. Especially, of course, the whole concept of combining Goku and Vegeta's attack from the movie for the, right, Gogeta special. I think that that's genius. Whoever in the studio cooked up that creative decision, so good, man. Such a cool decision. I really, really like that creativity on their part. But let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. I'd be really curious to hear what you guys have to say about these animations. I'm sure that most people are probably going to like Gogeta's more, which is fine because obviously Gogeta's more popular than Broly. But from obviously my analytical standpoint, right, I think that I like Broly's a little bit better. And I like both of these characters a lot. I love Broly and Gogeta, right? I don't know if I could put one over the other, right? I mean, maybe I'd even put Gogeta over Broly. I don't know. It kind of just depends on the day, I suppose. But don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy. Again, let me know what you think of Gogeta's animations in the comment section below. Let me know what unit you are going to be summoning on first. And with all that being said, I will catch you guys in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.